Okay, so there are a lot of different qualities of the way that light hits on something and it makes it work. And what I want to talk to you about right now is something that becomes a little strange. So this is what happens when you have a translucent object. So for instance, and it's really fun to draw, for instance, if you have a water droplet, water droplets function like this. So imagine you've got a water droplet and you've got the light coming from up here. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting that can happen is that if you imagine the inside of a water droplet, like if we could cut it in two, and if the light is coming in that direction, what's happening is sometimes the light is not really caught by what's happening over here. However, as it passes through, it reaches this bowl-like structure on the inside and is caught right in here. That's where it reflects from the most. And what happens out here is that off of the surface, you get a surface reflection. And then what happens right here is that right there, you start to get what would be a cast shadow. So strangely, this part is really dark. That's a highlight. This part down here is light, and that right there is really dark. So let's play that out and see how it works. So if we take our water droplet and we're saying, okay, this is going to be kind of the dark side. And this over here is going to be a cast shadow. Right there, and the cast shadow, like we can see up in here, it might have a little bit of length on it, kind of a little bit of a longish cast shadow. And then the transition between this darkness over on this side, what's happening is it's a really gentle transition over. And it may be that it even really darkens. It may be that that by the time it's getting too dark, by the time it's getting into here, it's doing something along the lines of real form turning. It's like a real, almost Terminator type darkness. It almost seems like it's a rounded surface, and over on this side of this rounded surface, what we're seeing is we're seeing the effect of what's below it. However, the rounded top of it moves in a gradation. And you end up with a highlight inside of here that's really profound. And if you want to increase that sense of the highlight, what you could do is you could darken this. So what's happening in this water droplet is light is passing through. It's partially being, part of what's happening is on the exterior part of this. So we have to think of it as having an exterior, and this is the exterior. The light's hitting here. There's a highlight right there, and the light is gradually lessening as it moves that way. However, the light is passing into it, and as it hits in here, it's illuminating this entire surface. And so you're getting this effect like this. And this water droplet principle works exactly the same. Well, let's see. So if you have a water droplet moving along the edge of this thing, what you'd be doing is you'd be looking to have a dark side. The top edge of it would be dark. There's a cast shadow. And then there's a little highlight. And that's what you have. And it starts looking like a water droplet. And then you could take the water droplets down to the ground. Could drip all the way down to the ground. Same thing. Cast shadow. And what this teaches us how a certain kind of translucency works. And the kind of translucency that I'm interested in is, well, you can notice, and I've pulled some samples here of, so these are like little water droplets. And it could be that this thing is sitting out in the rain. This is like something sitting out in the rain. And the kind of translucency that I'm interested in also happens with eyeballs. So if you've noticed that this eyeball has, if you're rendering an eyeball, and you have to figure out, okay, here's the pupil. And of course the local value of the pupil is really, really dark. And in the pupil, we don't have anything to worry about so far as the silhouette. However, the pupil, because it's wet, has this heavy level of reflectiveness. It's like water is sitting on top of the pupil, and so it will be extremely reflective. And now as we move into the iris, what ends up happening is, if we're saying that our light is coming from over here, what ends up happening is the same thing that happens on a drop of water. This side of it, strangely, is a little bit darker. And then as you move over to the right, to the side that's away from the light, it ends up getting lighter. So here is the reflection on the surface. And I'm going to shape it like a window. Look at, I can put the lines from the window in it. And that's the highlight. And then over in the other side, the eye grows lighter. Now, that's because that's a really translucent section of the eye. So, but let's bring into this eye the other part of the eyeball, right? Here's the other part of the eyeball, but the other part of the eyeball is nowhere near as translucent as the iris. So because the light is coming from up here, what's going to happen is this side of the eyeball now is going to darken. And as we move around to the light side, we move around to the side of the form that's towards the light, it will lighten. So you see how we're getting a kind of an inverse effect? So now the white of the eye works a lot more like standard form. And we could make it dripping a tear onto this. That could be the story of our picture. And this image, this right here, is a marble, and you see the same kind of translucency happening.